Hey everyone, welcome to Keto and Crime. Today I have a special request by a great longtime subscriber of mine. It's not something that I really wanted to do, but for her I'm going to do it because she's a longtime subscriber and that's what keeps this channel going. Also, I think it's a pretty important thing to talk about and just kind of look at um, recent goings on, both in the country and the world, as well as um, what's different, what's the same as years past. And what I'm talking about is she wanted my opinion on why I think number one, the USA has such trouble with mass shootings, and B, why there's been such an uptick in them in 2021. So that's what I'm going to give you. And I'm going to be as apolitical as possible because I don't like to get political. You all know that by now. But in this one, I'm going to have to. Just a little bit, but I'm going to try to keep it as neutral as possible. So, mass shootings go all the way back, as far as we know, into the Roaring Twenties here in the United States. Basically, when weapons were capable of doing a mass shooting event. I mean, prior to the 1920s, gun manufacturers, it was kind of impossible with a musket, or a low-powered rifle to do a mass shooting. So there have not been mass shootings, but you can't say that there haven't been mass casualty events since the dawn of this country. You can go back as far as things like the Boston Tea Party, um, massacres on both colonial and Native American villages that were done with muskets, with bows, with arrows, with swords. Look at so colonialism, of course, and also not just colonialism. Prior to this country, to this continent being founded in 1400, in 1492, and even into when Jamestown was first founded in 1600s. There was, I'm sure, Native American massacres of different villages. Uh, One village attacks another village. There has not been a continent in this world that has not been touched by mass violence. I think that's just something that's innately in the human animal, is to be tribal and to try to make your tribe the tribe, no matter what the cost. So even before the official founding of this country, there was mass violence. It just wasn't with firearms. It was with other means of weaponry. I mean, look at the Great Chicago Fire. That was somebody arson wiped out a whole, most of Chicago with one flint. So you can't say that mass violence has not always occurred. And I said, you go back to the dawn of time, Ooga Booga killed Booga Booga. So, and their entire village. So it's just part of the human psyche to want to wipe out people that are different than their tribe. Now, with that being said, when we get into the modern era of mass shootings, we see those same reasons come out over and over. For example, I know this is Wikipedia, but it is a good jumping off place. When I start researching a case or historical something, I always start with Wikipedia, because if you scroll down to Wikipedia, in Wikipedia you find great sources. A lot of them are peer-reviewed, that are a lot more authentic than just Wikipedia itself. And this is where I start. I start down here and I find other sources for my videos. So I start at Wikipedia, but for this, there's really no other place unless I filmed my old encyclopedia, and that gave out in probably 1995-ish is when it became obsolete. There is really no other way for me to put as many shootings in front of your face as I can at this moment. Now, when we talk about mass shootings, we're talking about the deaths or injuries to 3 or more people. So keep that in mind. So there are a lot of shootings in this country that don't get characterized as mass shootings that should be, especially today when you see a lot of politicalization about this topic. People on the far left tend to want to villainize a certain race and only report on shootings that involve that race attacking another race. And then on the far right, you have people that are so, magun that they don't want to look at anything. So it's politicized on both sides. And it's me, a moderate, who's right in the middle. And I do lean more right than I do left. I'll admit that. But still mostly in the middle. As a libertarian, I don't care who you are, what color you are, what sexual orientation you are. As long as you're not treading on me or anyone else or putting your beliefs and trying to make it law so that I have to, you go do whatever you want to do, and I'll support you in it, brothers and sisters and everyone in between. I will support you in it. But it's when my dander gets up, it's more about when government is trying to take too much control of us. And so I will put this out front. I am a Second Amendment believer. We have guns. We have weapons. And I believe it's every person's right to be able to protect themselves from not only crime, but also an oppressive government. Brothers and sisters, it is really dangerous when only the government has weapons capable of defending oneself. That puts us all in a precarious situation. So I'm going to put that out front. But on the flip side, I also know that there's a lot of gun laws today that go unheeded and unenforced and are just kind of worthless to even have because they're not followed. So I'm aware of that. All right, I'm going to put that out front, but let's start way back. As I was saying, there have been mass casualty events since man could reach out and touch another man. And when I say man, I mean mankind, humans, Homo sapiens. As long as we've been able to reach out and touch each other, there's been mass violence. And that it goes for every continent. But let's specifically talk about modern U.S. mass shootings. And when guns were actually capable of creating a mass casualty situation. One of the first was and you'll notice a lot of these were, the early ones that I'm going to talk about were racially motivated, and it was white people trying to wipe out African Americans. So anything you see here from the OC Florida one here up to Greenwood, Tulsa, and if you have never read the story of Black Wall Street, I highly recommend you do. This was an out-and-out move by a town that was racist, a predominantly white town that tried to wipe out a very successful African American section of a town. I mean, there's no way around it. They was racists. And they even had government help here. So terrible. There has been terrible atrocities done to people that were outside of the majority race in this country. And you can't deny that. But as an optimist and as somebody that looks around realistically, there's a lot less of that today. Are we perfect? No. But I also don't believe there's any person that if they don't work hard and obey the law, that can't make it in the country. I don't believe that that's not the case. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but just from what I see. I grew up in a trailer park. I grew up in a meth-making kind of trailer park in Appalachia. So I was poor as poor could be. And I made it out of there. I'm female. I'm LGBT. I made it out of there. And I did okay for myself. I have one of my good friends today, African American female. She also made it out of there and did quite well. Also LGBT. If we can do it, Anyone can do it. That's all I'm saying. So I'm speaking from my personal experience. And if you want to really break down FBI stats, we can do that too. But don't want to get into that. We're talking about mass shootings here. Much happier topic. It's dripping with irony and sarcasm. Anyway, so yeah, read up on Black Wall Street. It will absolutely chafe your butt. And then got a little break from that here in Illinois. This was a United Mine Workers protest that got a little violent. And then here another racially motivated, all the way up till we get until several mine or union outbreaks. This is kind of when we were going through the Industrial Revolution and workers' rights. You had The Jungle, written by Upton Sinclair, that was talking about the evils that went along with the Industrial Revolution. So you had a lot of the rise of unions and a very anti-union sentiment when you get into some of these things, and a lot of that turned violent. So again, tribal, race on race, union on non-union, tribal. And then you get here to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and I actually did a video on that. I'll link it up here, where you had criminals shooting criminals. Good riddance. So yeah, a variety, but again, tribal, even though but the motivations were different. You had race as a motivation, then you had perceived evils against workers in the 20s, a lot of evils against the workers, versus the want for unfettered capitalism. That's a reason, and that created the two tribes. And then here you have criminal activity. St. Valentine's Day Massacre, criminal activity, money versus money, tribal. And then as we get into the modern era, still more union, elections, tribal. A lot of the stuff through the 40s and 50s were motivated by the Great Depression. And then in the 50s, again, we're back to racial. And this is where we first start to see in the 1950s with the Clutter family murders, where this is one of the first family annihilators that we'll find. And I've done a whole huge array of videos on family annihilators and their reasonings. And they're very different, but most of them just want to get rid of the family because either they feel the family is secretly ashamed of them, or they feel that the family's holding them back. But that can all be brought down to narcissism in most cases, like Chris Watts, Chris Coleman, any of those guys, Jeffrey McDonald, all narcissism, which is mental illness, mental and personality defects. So this is where we first see mental illness starting to take hold of who is killed and their reasonings for killed. And then we start getting into the 60s. You had counterculture, so you had a lot of shootouts between the young baby boomers, who were the hippies of their generations. They were the progressives of their generations. Baby boomers get a lot of crap today, but they were the progressives of their generation. And so, of their childhood, and they did a lot to forward civil rights in this country. And so you had a lot of protest-related murders. You had hippie cult murders, with Charles Manson, again, mental illness and cult mentality, all, again, tribal. It's hippies, non-hippies, cult members, non-cult members, tribal. It's just innately built in us. Different reasons, but the same kind of tribalism. And then you get into things like the Deadly Tower. Charles Whitman also did a video on that. Again, mental illness. He had a tumor that caused him to basically go off his rocker and shoot a bunch of people. You had John List, who's also done video on Family Annihilator. Again, mental illness. So you start to see mental illness start to come in a little bit more than maybe tribalism in some cases. Mental illness comes in. But then in the modern era, I would say the 80s, moving forward to the modern day, it's going to be mental illness mixed with tribalism. Like, for example, The Atlanta shootings, where the gentleman, excuse me, he's not a gentleman, he's a piece of shit, but he went in and mowed down a bunch of massage parlors and killed 8 people. Okay. He had a sex addiction, a pornography and sex addiction. He was also kind of a religious fanatic. Probably has other mental illness that we're unaware of that caused him to think that he could right his own sins by killing others that he suspected or were accused of running secret sex shops within these massage parlors. I think he would have shot them whether or not they were Asian. But again, I mean, I'm sure maybe if they had been white too, he might have given pause. But I still think the motivation there wasn't really racial tribalism. It was more religious, a warped sense of religious morality tribalism. He thought he was going to right sins, and they were the givers of sin. So there you go. Same in Boulder. You had a young Islamic gentleman, a Syrian refugee, second generation Syrian, that Syrian American that had become radicalized by the far left and decided he wanted to go to a store that was predominantly white and Asian and take out some people. So again, tribalism. But I guarantee you, every single one of these, no matter what side they were on, there's also going to be mental illness mixed with tribalism. So that brings us up to the modern day. And like I said, the list of mass shootings in 2021 is vastly under what it should be. I mean, honestly, the definition of a mass shooting, as I said, is like so far 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 documented mass shootings, people over 3. But yet, if you Google crime statistics in a lot of urban areas, put race, put religion, put all that aside, you're going to see a lot of shootings of over 3 people. So this is vastly underreported. So my opinion is that we are hardwired to be tribal. We are hardwired to wipe out any tribe that threatens our tribe, and that comes in a variety of different things. But also, we've become more divided than we've ever been. I have never seen such an atmosphere of conservative versus liberal versus leftist versus moderates. It's sickening. We are all Americans. We are all Americans. And we need to start acting like it. There are some jerks out there that are racist and sexist and prejudice against people for their sexuality, and yeah, those people will eventually fade away because this new generation of kids coming up, Gen Z, they're going to clean up a lot of crap. They're very level-headed young people. But us Gen Xers and us millennials, we're just up in, the boo-pah with the boomers. But it really shouldn't be there's good and bad people in all generations, all races, all religions. And so it comes down to who benefits from keeping us divided? The richest corporations and the government. If we could ever just come together, there'd be real reform in this country. And that's what I want. I may think that 60 miles an hour is too slow for a speed limit, and somebody over here may think that 120 miles is too fast. But if us as level-headed people can sit down, we can come up with something in the middle of 60 and 120 that will just about take care of everybody. There is a compromise. And when it comes down to gun laws, the answer is not more. The answer is actually enforcing what we already have on the books. It's like trying to put more water in a bucket with a hole in it before patching the hole. Patch the hole, use what's there, and then if you still need more, then we talk about adding more to it. But that's my opinion. I mean, I am truly fearful of not being allowed to have certain kinds of weapons. But if you look back at a lot of these mass killings, at least 60% of them got their weapons in an illegal manner or in a skirted manner, meaning that proper gun laws were not in. They bought their weapons in a legal way, but laws pertaining, as far as the customer goes, but laws pertaining to that purchase were not obeyed. They were not enforced. And if they had been enforced, a lot of these people would never have gotten their hands on the weapons, the one that purchased them. Now, there are some here that stole them. Okay, that could happen. But I'm just saying that the vast majority of these people are tribal, radicalized in some way, mentally ill, and don't even get me started on how many of these people had warning signs of mental illness prior and were not treated. It's a combination approach, people. It's enforcement of the gun laws already on the books, mental health treatment, and somehow bringing this fractured country back together. I have no idea how to do it. Other than I'm going to treat everybody I meet with respect and hope that they do the same with me. And I hope, dear subscriber, that answered your dear friend, that answered your question. And I hope you enjoyed just my friendly little analysis and rant. And I will be back this weekend with more true crime and history. And until then, love each other. Keep on crime.